Favor?
All
Aye.
right.
Aye.
All right,
Thanks. Good, thank you. Also, in the same email, you received the minutes from the December 13th virtual meeting. If there's any comments or questions on that, if not, do we
Nope.
have a motion to accept it?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a
Roger.
second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Thank you. Welcome to the January commission meeting, a cold January commission meeting. Thank you for all joining. I'm hoping everybody stays warm. Unfortunately, I did plan today to take this call in person at the commission office, but a flat tire as a result of a snowmobile stud on dry road kept me from attending the meeting. So I'm attending it, of course, virtually here. I did plan on trying to fix it this morning, but this dog don't hunt when it's minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. So I'll have to fix it when it gets above zero. As part of some of our business here, we do owe Katie an annual review. And my hopes are that we can complete that review in person at our local leadership conference on either April 18th or April 19th. What I am requesting today from the board is that we put together a few members for an executive director annual review committee. And I'll ask if there's anyone that would be interested in that to be part of this process. How I would like to do this is I can, being in business for a lot of years, I can use one of my templates from a professional review that I've done in the past. And of course, it's just a template and I can kind of tailor it to what we do at the commission here. And as a committee, whoever we decide that's going to be part of this committee, we can put it together as a group and we can do it through a couple of, say, virtual meetings, and all in hopes that we can complete this process and this review again in person on April 18th or April 19th, God willing, and COVID in check. Is there anyone that would like to participate on this committee with me?
I would.
Hey, Bill? Anyone else?
Yeah, I would. That's no problem. If you need meet people.
Mike, okay. Anyone else?
Yeah, go ahead, Roger.
Roger, okay. Again, what I'm just planning as what we can do is we can have a couple of virtual meetings. I'll send the template out, how I kind of perceive it, and then we can have a conference call on what needs to be changed on it or what needs to be tailored to the commission, and then we can actually have another call on and complete the document. Anybody else? Katie, do we need to do that in the form of a resolution, or is that just good the way we did it?
I think you're fine the way you did it, and it's probably good not to have a fifth because then you would have a quorum.
Yep.
And then the other, I do have the review that was done, I don't know, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. If you all want that, a copy of that, so you can see what was said the last time and what you guys charged me with, then I'd be happy to send that to you all.
Yeah, why don't you send that out? I do have a copy, but why don't you send it to us then? Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Appreciate it.
Good. With that, let's jump right into the executive director report. Katie?
Thank you, Jan. So some administrative items to start with. As you probably got an email, I think last week, we are obviously meeting virtually today. Thankfully, this remote meeting ability got extended right around January 15th when it was due to expire. And the way it's set up right now is that the remote meeting just remains in effect until the end of the pandemic, until the governor just, declares that that's over. So it'll make it a little easier, I think, in terms of these constant extensions. That's a good thing because a lot of our communities have been taking us up on using our Zoom account again to host their either totally virtual or hybrid meetings. And everybody's pretty much got that down to a science now. So that's where we are with the remote meetings. I emailed you on Sunday the draft executive budget for 2022-23. It's a PDF and I wanted you all to see it. It's all good. We remain at 15 full-time equivalents in the budget, which is great. It was a little confusing when I first looked at the document as if you look down the columns, it looked like we had a reduction of $50,000 from our general fund allocation in 2022 to what they were recommending in 2023. So I looked at that with some staff here, reached out to budget, and what that is mid-year this current fiscal year, they increased our personal services line to make sure we had enough to accommodate cost of livings and step increases and Jean's retirement payout, which were all happening in the same fiscal year, and they were worried we might go over our allocation. So they gave us an extra $50,000 temporarily this year to make sure we had no issues. So when you see the reduction of 50,000 to next year, it's actually what we were originally budgeted this year. It just for some reason they used that small bump up when they put together their executive budget document. So long story short, we're fine. We're exactly where we were last year. No worries on this. And so I'm not concerned. Any questions on that though? I know Tom did email me over the weekend and I just want to make sure that made sense.
Yeah, it does. It was a confusing document.
Did you tell them, Katie, that it would be all right to leave it in?
I did, I think they, and if we really needed it, I would have pushed. But at this point in time, as we're going to get to very soon with hiring, I'm having a hard time hiring. So I don't think we need it right now, but eventually we may. Some changes in Albany as to be expected with a new administration. Our longtime contact on the second floor, Barb Rice, is moving to a new position. She's going to be the new executive director of the Adirondack Park Agency. Terry Martino, who has been the executive director there for many years, is retiring. So Barb's making a move, which is good for her. She's originally from Saranac Lake, so this makes a lot of sense for her, I think, on a couple of levels. But that just means we'll have a new contact in Albany for us, for our assistant deputy secretary. So I've spoken with Barb. She's going to make the introductions. I've actually interacted with Jane Weisenberg a few times in the past. She's out of New York City. She's also a DepSec. I think it'll all be fine, but I'll be looking for an opportunity to do a formal introduction of the commission to her as soon as I can do that. Hiring. So as you all know, we were advertising for positions, project specialists 2 and 1 planner, as well as getting Jen Harville's promotion through. And my report on that is Jen's paperwork is at the director of budget, right at the top, should be signed here shortly, no issues. Project specialists, the 2 candidates' paperwork is in Albany working its way through the system. And I anticipate some movement on that shortly too. We had been hoping for February 2nd start dates for those 2 positions. I'm not sure if we'll meet that or not, but there's still a possibility we will. And then as far as the planner position, we did have a fairly limited number of resumes that we received. We reviewed them all. We interviewed several, actually made an offer to one, an individual from New Jersey who we just couldn't come to terms with on salary levels. So he ended up declining. So we've really exhausted our options right now for the planner position. We've decided to take a break. The job is still open. We're not actively advertising at the moment, just because we were all a little burnt out after that effort. And we are doing some soft sharing of that information to people, but I think we'll re-advertise in earnest again come April. Hopefully, maybe we'll catch some new crop of graduates out of some of the planning schools. We have worked directly and communicated directly with Cornell, with Buffalo, and with Albany. Those are the three main planning programs in New York State. This is a problem beyond just us. Our colleagues at Jefferson County Planning Department are having a problem finding planners. It seems to be there's a dearth of people graduating from planning positions. It's a problem because, we've only got 2 planners and one will be on maternity leave here shortly. So we are going to be a little bit in just triage mode, dealing with what we've got on our plates, maybe not taking a lot of new projects on until we either hire or Elaine is back from her maternity leave. We can't stress Matt out too much, and he can only do so much. There's only so many hours in the day. So that's where we are with hiring. Any questions on that? All right, next, we have had some correspondence from the Oswego County legislator that represents Richland, Herb Yurden, Mike's brother, expressing some interest in Richland joining the Tug Hill region to get our services. Paul took the original request, and then there's been some email correspondence since then. I did share with her our current outside region policy, which I actually sent on the email on Sunday to all of you as well to take a look at if you haven't looked at it in a while, to refresh yourself on that. I have it on, maybe I should share this because I think this might be something we want to talk about a little bit more in general, just because we have been seeing a lot more. That's the wrong, just one second. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. It's been a while since we've looked at this policy, 2003. So almost 20 years. It's amazing how time flies. But if you read down through here, the principles are, the primary focus of the commission work is the region. At the time, it was 41 towns, 21 villages. That's a little different because we've lost some villages to dissolution, but the general boundary has not changed. Items 3 and 4 talk about projects outside the region. And we do often get involved in projects that are, go over the boundary because it makes a lot of sense. Black River watershed is an example. Salmon River watershed issues are an example. This priority of within our four counties and immediately contiguous to the region is something we've weighed in the past. Then to go to the number 10, which talks about technical assistance versus projects. Again, it's that towns and villages in the 4 Tug Hill counties and immediately contiguous to that boundary, and which belong to a council of governments. So we did share with her the idea of the possibility of joining the Salmon Rivers Council of Governments, if that was of interest to Richland, and of interest to the Salmon Rivers Council of Governments. That would be one way for him to get some commission services similar to what happens in Raycog right now with the town of Wilna, villages of Carthage and DeFerry, and potentially the town of New Bremen, who has a pending request to Raycog to join. So I haven't gotten anything more back from Mr. Yurden since I sent that email. I didn't know if he would join us today, but he's not on the call. Welcome to hear your thoughts on this. I don't know. Yep, go ahead.
Is the 41 towns a legal definition or boundaries as proposed under our initiating legislation? That's my first question.
Yes, it is spelled out.
Okay, so unless the legislature and the governor changes it, they cannot be technically a member because they're not encompassed within an area. So
Correct.
then the only other thing is services. Is that correct?
Correct.
And the services would be what would like a normal member would receive? Because it's kind of unclear here in what you sent me.
So it would be joining a council of governments if they're not part of the region. And I will say, like, for example, in Raycog, Wilna, Carthage, DeFariat, they get the services of the circuit rider. Circuit rider attends their meetings just like normal. And frankly, we do get involved in projects just like they are a member of the region. For example, right now, DeFariat has a brownfield opportunity area project pending outside the region, just over the river in Black River. Big project, I think actually pretty impactful project. And we've been being involved in that, and I foresee us continuing to be involved in it.
But we don't get reimbursed for it.
No.
So my only concern is that with the short staff and budgets, because I don't think the governor's office or the legislature has increased our budgets too dramatically since I've been on, is that if anyone was to receive additional help and or support beyond what you've discussed, I would think they would either reimburse us or they would have to, the state would have to take that into consideration, that our impact is greater than initially legislated, and honestly give us, the commission, the necessary financial resources to do it. I mean, that's just my opinion, but I would think that the assemblymen and senator that represent a lot of the Tug Hill and this Richland area, that should be their top of agenda. You know, if we go to 42, we should get your $50,000 back.
Or more. Yeah.
Or more. So, I mean, quite frankly, I think it's the minority leader, Barkley, and Senator Ritchie needs to step up and say, hey, you know, this commission is doing a fantastic job in the area, and towns that are bordering us want to be part of this highly constructive and beneficial commission. So the senator and the assemblyman should write legislation and advocate for it to be placed in the budget or in that way, so that we're able to do this. I mean, I would be in favor of Richland coming in, but then again, we have limited resources, and obviously you just announced we have limited people that are planners. So I don't want to disadvantage the initial 41, but then again, I think this could be solved by Albany, which they need to take that step.
Can I say something to because this has been an issue for a long time, and Sandy Creek is another town that came many times to get expanded, and they're of course right. And all Sandy Creek and Richland seemed like a logical thing, but it was my understanding. I thought if we provided any major services, they had to reimburse us some dollar amount. Secondly, in order for them to become full-fledged members, this legislation would have to be modified, amended in order to allow that to happen. And I don't think we've had a lot of support in Albany to do that at this point in time. Of course, we went through a time period when they tried to eliminate us and cut our funding and all that stuff. So this year is the first time they've increased our staff in 20 years, 15 years, something like that. So I don't think it's a bad idea, but I agree with you, Bill. Somebody in the senator should step up and try to do something if we're going to do this. But we'd have to add additional staff if we're going to do that also, more than what we have got increased this year. That would also provide, I think, create a situation where you might have to have a bigger office space to handle additional staff too. So that's another issue that I'm sure that Omni's going to be looking at. So not opposed
Well,
to
the
it.
Watertown offices, Mike, are not exactly filled in the
Oh, they're not? Oh,
building in
okay.
Watertown.
Oh, good.
So I happen to know the guy that ran that building for a number of years. There's as Katie can tell you, there's a lot of empty spaces there that we could put people if she were to be successful in hiring people.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, the office space is not really the concern, but I
Okay.
think you both make good points about just, the ability of staff to manage the requests for additional work, for additional meeting coverage. You've got two things that play really, the circuit rider, you're adding that many more meetings per month to their agenda. And that becomes really difficult, especially when you have multiple towns meeting on the same night. And then you're generating much more work for the Watertown staff. And we've managed it so far, but at some point in time, it's a tipping point, right? And you can't keep the quality of the work up. Now, I don't know what will happen, if there will be a formal request, or if this is just kind of it was kind of a thought that isn't going to go any farther or not. I may just actually pick up the phone and give her a call just to see where things are at. So I don't want to get surprised. No one wants to get surprised by anything. And now is the time. We're still within the 30-day budget amendments. If something, we're gonna come together this year.
Well, there's a couple of things here. We do know that we're having difficulty hiring anyone to bring into the fold, be it planners, be it community development people, natural resource, whatever it is, we're having problems bringing people into the fold. Any request like this has to come from the village or the town. And it'd have to come from Richland. That's not going to come from the Tug Hill Commission.
Right.
And I think that what we really need to also take a look at as part of this process is that our enabling legislation back in 73 or 72 allowed for 14 or 12 core towns. That was the Tug Hill Commission back in 73. It was just the core forest of Tug Hill.
Yep.
And then I think, correct me if I'm wrong, back in 91, we decided to expand it. And that actually we went through the process, and there was enabling legislation which changed with the help of the Assembly, the Senate, the governor signed it into that expanded our area geographically here. I'd really like to know what the delta was when we were just the core forest. What did we get when we went to almost triple the size? Was there, you're on your own, or we got, basically the people you got, it's nice that you're growing. I don't know what the methodology was at that time. It'd be interesting just to find out what resources were given to us when we expanded almost threefold. And that could help us with this process too.
I'm sure we've got that in some of the documents that are in the archives. I'll try to take a look at that.
Yeah.
I
So
think
if there's a crisis right now, resources are resources. And I hate to say this, but to some degree, we do pick and choose our battles because we have to.
Yeah.
We don't like to publicize it, but that's the reality of this thing because we do have limited resources here. So if a community calls us that's part of one of our cogs and just needs somewhat technical help, I don't see an issue with us giving those resources to them, time allowed and resources allowed. I don't see an issue with that right now because this legislation route is going to be, timely, and it's going to be consuming for a lot of people. That's just my take on this.
I was always under the maybe misapprehension that one of the original things about Tug Hill was, a lot different back in my grandfather's day, what was Tug Hill and what is Tug Hill today. And I always thought it was where the watershed,
yes.
any place the watershed reached, which would include Richland, had it not already been in the Eastern Lake Ontario Commission.
And Sandy Creek also.
Yes.
There definitely was some of that. I've went through years ago to try to get my head around it. And there was also an elevation. There was an elevation criteria. I think you had to have at least part of the town had to be 500 feet above mean sea level. And I think you can catch Richland and Sandy Creek with that elevation as well.
Right. I think the original staff, when I got on the commission, was a lot more than it was in the last few years. I think that might have been a reflection when they expanded it, okay? And then through the years, because they keep cutting this back and we lost a lot of personnel. But I think that might have been a reflection of the increase when they did that in 93 or whatever.
Well, I think if you really look at the real, why we're here today, and you go back to the history in 73, is that company called Horizon wanted to do a major expansion in the Saranac Lake region. And at that time, that was the beginnings of the APA. And unfortunately enough, it was the same governor, and then Horizon moved over and wanted to move into Montague in Osceola. And, Rockefellers did the same thing. He says, okay, we know we got our, pardon expression, we got our tails kicked with the APA and the way we structured it as a board that had legislative process. Let's try something different here. And that's how we became it. And it really became part of trying to save the watershed. You're absolutely correct.
Yep.
So we've evolved a lot since then. I mean, we were, as I can remember, we were a natural resource organization back in 73. And that's changed considerably.
Yeah.
Well, I
And the
appreciate-
original COG and our COG, the original COG was set up as a planning board, a cooperative planning board, because the thought then was it was going to be, we were going to have zoning crammed down our throats or we were going to do it ourselves. So the original COG, our COG, was formed as a planning board to try and cut that off at the pass.
Yep.
Well, I appreciate all that good conversation. There's a few follow-up items on my end. So I think more to come on this, but it's good to have everyone thinking about it now. And we'll see what actually comes out of all of it. A few other administrative items. Our 2022 annual meeting location. I know it seems like far away, but October will be here before we know it. Have secured 0 Dock Street in Carthage for our annual meeting. We had our commission meeting there in the fall. It's a very beautiful location right on the Black River. They've done some significant renovations to the building. Many of you, I think, were there that day. So we've got that secured, and we've got a band. We're going to give the fiddlers a year off, and Joe Rollins is here, but I don't see him anymore. His band that he's a member of, Cincinnati Creek, has agreed to be our entertainment for the evening. So just nailing down a few things like that, so we don't have to figure it out more last minute. So I just wanted to share that with you. And we will be doing
October 20th date.
Yes. And we will be doing our annual, our new awards, community recognition awards again. That nomination form will be out April 1 with a similar time frame for, get them in by June. We'll deliberate over those with the COG chairs and announce those and deliver those at the annual meeting in October. Speaking of COG chairs are meeting on January 31st. We're doing a Zoom meeting again this year, so we can share with them what we've got going on, and they can report back to us what each of the councils has. Headwaters, our annual report, is in production mode right now. We're finishing up writing articles, and Gwen is doing the layout. That has to be out by March 31st, according to our legislation. So we will be hitting that date, hopefully with a few weeks to spare. And one other small piece, we have, as you know, if you've been in the office, we've been picking away at carpeting and painting the space over the last few years. It hadn't been touched in probably, I don't know, 30 years. So we're finishing up the last piece of that here in the next month or so before the end of the budget cycle. So if you come by, excuse the mess, it'll be a little bit of a little bit messy for a little bit as we finish that up. Some regional projects, minimum maintenance roads. At this point in time, based on the conversations I've had, we're going to be staying with the statewide bill. Right now, the bill number is A326. I've had some good conversations with the bill sponsors, Senator Griffo and Assemblywoman Gunther, in the last couple of weeks. This is the Assemblywoman's top priority bill for the Transportation Committee this year. She had another bill that was really her priority last year, something to do with organ donation that got through. So I was on a Zoom with her chief of staff and her a couple weeks ago, and she said this was her priority. She would be pushing for it as much as she can. So that was a good thing to hear. We were talking about some strategies, trying to get additional assembly members on the bill, working with our other partners, the other Adirondack councils, New York State Snowmobile Association, all those people to start trying to push this in concert. So we're hoping that we'll get some traction again. Again, the staff at Transportation Committee will be key to moving this forward and getting them involved and engaged in the negotiation of some language. It seems as though it's a bit more pointedly important this year. The last week or two has been interesting in terms of some potential improvements to a flat rock road in the town of Martinsburg. The Roaring Brook Wind Farm, which is in Martinsburg, has offered to the town to pay to have that section of minimum maintenance road paved. It's a significant length. It would be between $600,000 $700,000 to make the improvement to the road. The town is seriously considering accepting their offer, feeling as though there's incremental requests for improvements as camp owners come on the road and want year-round access, as well as feeling like it's going to happen eventually, but without this statewide bill, and why not have the tab be picked up by the wind farm versus the town taxpayers. So that is a really hot topic of conversation in Lewis County with the snowmobile people, with the town people. Not sure how that's all going to shake out, but that gives some added urgency to this bill, I believe. And let's use that added urgency to try to put some pressure on powers that be. So I'm sharing that information. I've got a map, and it's nice to visualize some things. So this is a map of the region. The blue line is the boundary of the region. Can you see this okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. These kind of pale squiggly lines are the roads in the region, and where there's roads and there's actually snowmobile trails in there. But what's important to point out are these yellow lines. These yellow lines are portions of minimum maintenance roads that are also snowmobile trails. So it kind of demonstrates if these start to get chipped away at, where in the snowmobile trail network we start to see some losses and some loss of connection. And people will talk about trying to put these back onto private land. And that's a great idea, but in reality, it's pretty complicated when you get multiple landowners and wetlands, where there's a lot of just physical limitations to building the appropriate type of trail. So this visual we've been using, and then the other visual, let me see if I can bring it up. So can you see this zoom in? Can you see this other map?
No.
No.
Okay, let me
Yeah.
stop my share and reshare with this other one up. So this is a zoomed in to that map. This is the town of Martinsburg. This is town of Montague in, just to orient yourself. Loudville's over here. Here's Flat Rock Road. The wind farm is kind of, I don't know, wind farm is actually in this general area right here, I think, in the corner. And this is the section that they are talking about upgrading and making it year-round access, plowing it. So as you can see, that's a significant snowmobile trail. I don't think there's any final decisions that have been made, but it is really definitely on the table. We've seen some board minutes that discuss it. I've talked to Terry Tiss personally. Talked to the Snowmobile Association, talked to local snowmobilers. There's a lot of talk and concern about that. So I wanted you all to be aware of that issue. Relatedly, out of the economic impact study that we participated in last year with our 4 counties that, brought out the huge economic impact snowmobiling has to the region. Lewis County has put together a snowmobile action committee. They met for the first time last week. Jen Harville was our representative there. They are talking about this issue. They're talking about issues of enforcement. We've all seen over the last couple, just since we got snow, frankly, there's been a significant number of fatalities already. It's being talked about. There's concern there. So Lewis County is trying to figure out how they wrap their head around securing, supporting the snowmobile industry. There's also talk about securing trails with landowners. Are we talking some kind of property tax abatement? Are you talking about purchasing trail easements? There's a lot of things on the table right now, but just wanted you to all be aware. And if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer them.
Okay,
Yeah.
a couple of things. On that little map you brought up on Redfield, you had showed a snowmobile trail coming down the end of the Castor Road. I had to point out to you that that Castor Road is not open to sleds, has never been open to sleds. And that trail that the Wilson Plaskite Snowmobile organization put in there and put on the map is not a legal snowmobile trail. It's been an issue with the town and that's club for a long time. So just to let you know that that doesn't apply there really, because plus that road borders the state, a lot of state land on both sides. You couldn't, they're not gonna let you do that. So widen the road to make a road. So
Thank you, Mike, for pointing that out. I'm sure there are some errors in that. The snowmobile trail data, the latest I can get my hands on right now is 2018-19. And
well,
I
the thing
have
with
a
this,
request for
they
better.
put that on the snowmobile trail without approval of the town.
Yeah.
So there's been an error since it's been on the BAMP.
Aha.
They don't have a good relationship with the town at this point in time.
Understood. I see there's some chat going on for snowmobile fatalities since the beginning of the season. And it seems as I'm not sure what the factors are in all those. I'm not sure if those have been released yet, the details, but certainly an issue for the region and has a lot of impact on our local municipalities as well.
I think there's been 2 in Old Forge too.
And that's on a more controlled snowmobile trail system
Yeah.
with a significant
Permit.
amount of
Yeah.
enforcement. People just driving too fast. I don't know.
Speed.
Speed. Another interesting thing, yeah, Leona's chiming in too. Osceola one speed is the problem. And how do you get them to slow down?
Cut the horsepower on the engines.
That will happen. It'll never happen.
It's your manufacturer.
Yeah. How you influence that is very difficult, I think. Another kind of big change for part of the core forest, East Branch of Fish Creek, which we've been involved with for a long time. The big old Lions Falls land holding that is now owned in part by the Nature Conservancy and then in part by Mulpus / Corrigan. The Mulpus / Corrigan section, the part south of G&W Road, has been sold or is in the process of being sold to a new landowner. Their name is Blue Source Sustainable Forest Company. I have asked DEC for a contact there and they are still trying to figure out who the right contact is there. So that's a pretty big change. That's, 30,000 acres of the Eastern Core Forest. My understanding in looking at their website is they are more carbon focused. So they may be purchasing this property with carbon in mind. There's a whole change of the carbon market and there's probably some money to be made there. They are also somehow related to the Nature Conservancy. There's talk of, when you read their website, there's talk about the Nature Conservancy on there. So I'm trying to learn more about that. And like I said, get a contact. We do that working group meeting every year. We were just there in October. Tim Burpo from Mulpus did not say that they had a new landowner, but we have known that that property's been for sale for a couple of years now. And remember, it is also enrolled in 480A as of about a year ago. So lots of things at play there as well. And even if the new landowner wants to get out of 480A, which I don't know if they do or not, that's a rolling commitment. So once they decide they want to get out, it takes 9 years to get out because they have to finish their 10-year commitment that they made. So a couple more things. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking a lot. Interrupt me if you have questions, please. Broadband, we've been continuing the data from all the field work that was done in our counties through ECC Technologies has slowly been trickling into us. There's been a lot of QA, QC being done on the data as it's delivered to the counties, and ECC has had to go back and fix some things. We are just getting NIDA and Herkimer more final data, and we're creating a data set that shows areas of no infrastructure or very little infrastructure, and starting in the infancy stages of actual project with the Adirondack Central School District. So Boonville Forestport area, they're very engaged with us, having conversations. They've been having, issues with remote schooling since COVID started. Many of their students don't have the proper internet to do what they need to do at home. They've been providing them hotspots when they can, but without cell phone coverage, even hotspots don't work. So there's a lot of interest in that school district geography to try to improve things. So we had a good meeting last week or the week before with Frontier, because that's really, where the rubber hits the road is with the ISPs and then putting the infrastructure in. The town of Montague, as Jan has mentioned many times, has had Frontier in town making some significant improvements for the last couple of years. The supervisor there, Bruce Williams, sorry. He gave us a contact at Frontier, which we reached out to and had a good meeting. They seem to be very ready to come to the table and come up with some solutions if we give them the information to know where things are happening. Oh, bye, Angie. So we're going to see how that all plays out, but we're really still trying to figure out our role in broadband and keep it at the forefront and bring in the partners that we need to make the difference on the ground. So just want you to know that's happening. Yeah.
Katie, have the town supervisors been involved at all?
We haven't been part of any of our meetings yet. We've been debating on when to bring them into a meeting because we wanted to have a little bit more idea of what the heck we are proposing before we bring them into a meeting.
Okay, I know this is going back a few years. Ava was really upset with their coverage, and there were a couple people on the town board that had tried to pursue different avenues and it just really got nowhere, so I think that all the towns would be concerned. It is a really big problem in Forestport, I know.
I'm glad you bring that up, Jerry. Maybe rather than, we were thinking we would bring them into a meeting, but maybe if it's too soon for that, maybe we should at least be communicating with the towns that we're trying to do this and just, for that, maybe there's something that they've tried in the past that they could share back with us that would help us know better what direction to go in.
I know Forestport did something when the town of Webb was looking at different options. This was like a year or two ago, with the supervisor kind of living more in the northern part of the town, and his son goes to school in Webb. But they were involved in doing a study up there as well. So,
okay.
Hey, Kate.
Yep.
I hope you have better luck with Frontier than how they performed in this town. I'll tell you that right now. You won't get any recommendation from me to deal with Frontier whatsoever. They got, well, 4 years ago, the state allocated something like $1 million for broadband in the town of Redfield. Verizon has done a good job, taking a long time, but
John,
Frontier,
can I call you back?
they hired a subcontractor to run their lines and stuff like that. They didn't complete the main line. They stopped at about 6 miles north of Redfield. North Redfield's in Frontier, South Redfield's in Verizon, and their service has been poor, their attitude worse. So I don't have a lot of good things to say about Frontier at this point.
Well, I
Well,
think-
that's good to know. And maybe, you know, as we're talking with them, we can even gently bring that kind of thing up. Like, okay,
Yeah, I
well,
mean-
what happened in Redfield? You know, how can we avoid it? You know, that kind of issue moving forward.
You know, they stopped it on County Route 17 on the north side, about 6 miles out of Redfield. There was like another 12 families that didn't run the main line to. And in fact, in my road, I was told by a guy from Frontier, they'll never run it over on my road. So, and I had them with my phone service for many, many years. Their service used to be good. Their service became very, very poor. Charged a lot of money for a hard line, no computer other than dial up. They went through Chapter 11, but they was allocated by a lot of money from New York State to do this. They didn't complete it. They just dropped it 2 years ago. So
Maybe
Yeah.
I'll ask our contacts what happened there. Why not?
yeah,
I don't think
Well-
this is not gonna be an easy thing. It's, every community, every town's gonna be a different look, depending on who the provider is. I do know here in Montague, people are wondering why we have about 100% coverage. Anywhere there was a Niagara Mohawk or a National Grid pole, we now have Frontier Internet in this community. The realization is Frontier did not come here because they wanted to make money on internet service. That was the last thing in mind for them to do. In 2014, money was appropriated by the federal government for rural development of internet. And the work that would be performed by these providers would they would be able to mark it up. But the take on it was they had to do the work before they got paid by the federal government. Unfortunately, in the fall of 2014, Frontier went bankrupt. They filed for
Yeah.
Chapter 11. So basically, the federal administration came back and said, we're not giving you any money until you get yourself out of bankruptcy, which happened in the fall of 2018. That's when they started doing work in Montague. And the reality of this thing is really simple, is that they thought Montague was an easy click because all of the poles and all of the easements for power was owned by National Grid. And they figured that they could actually buy half of the easements from National Grid at a markup,
You
be
okay?
able to take the money from the Fed. And they did. So they own half those power poles now. So it's a perfect storm for them. But if anybody thinks that Frontier came here because they wanted to provide internet service at $60 a month, they're crazy. So every community is going to have to look at this thing. So if you got communities like Redfield that has 2 providers, it might not be as big an opportunity as it was for Montague, where it was kind of, hate to say this, virgin territory for them. So this is going to be an uphill battle, but you really got to dissect it town by town.
In Osceola, I know of at least one road. The Verizon line goes right by the end of the road. And a family who has children in school does not have internet, does not have cell phone coverage, has no, other than their landline, they have no contact at all. And you cannot, what can you do to make Verizon run that line up the road? They ran it all the way to West Leiden, but they can't run it up a quarter mile up that road.
So Leona, are you saying that Verizon line runs all the way up West Leiden Road from Osceola to West Leiden?
I think it does.
Because that was something that's been pointed out to us a few times, is there's issues on that road. We've got to find a contact. I mean, we need to have contacts at these ISPs. You know what I mean? You need to have somebody you can actually talk to, because the Frontier people are saying, well, we all have our territories. We need to have your address. So we need to know whose territory it's in. And we're like, well, can't you just give us the map of the territory? But that apparently isn't shareable. I don't know.
I used to have a number. I'll look on my emails at the library and try to come up with a contact for you. And I
Thank you.
also have, did you say you were looking for a copy of a snowmobile map current?
I need the GIS data. I have, and so I've got an ask into parks because I want to put it in our GIS and overlay stuff.
I think it's online someplace, NYS.
Yeah, it's just me getting it in the format that I can use it, but I will, maybe the Snowmobile Association is a good way to do it because they've obviously got it because they've got it in their app. Yeah, good point.
Katie, last week, the Northern Forest Center had a webinar. I think Elena and Carla and I listened in on it, and I'll forward it around if you want, but it was sort of a, case studies in like Vermont and Maine area, what they're doing for rural broadband. And along the lines, one of the things I thought was interesting, because I'm just really learning about broadband, but one of the things they cautioned was, they always say, the perception is that a little competition is great. And they were making the point that a little competition is not always good because you're bringing in, like Jan is suggesting, a resource that is not sustainable. So yeah, you bring it in subsidized, you build the poles, whatever, but then there's still not enough resource to fund that. And then prices end up going up. So, so I mean, does that make sense? I'm not an economist, but that was kind of the gist of it, that competition is not always good in a rural place.
So it's better just to have one person getting all the demand, so they're at least making a little bit.
Yeah, I don't know what the solution is.
I don't know.
Now I can comment because that's my degree. It's called farmers per acre. You get a certain level of productivity with 1, 2, 3, but when you get more than a certain number, productivity goes down and costs go up. So that is the term.
Yep.
Thanks,
What
Bill.
was it again? The term?
Farmers per acre. It was one of my professor's favorite things, talking about competition and productivity.
Perfect. All right. Couple of quick other things. LGC, the mailing is out. We have been hearing anecdotally that some communities and just some members of some communities haven't been getting their registration mailing in the mail. So if you hear of anybody who didn't get it, have them call the office and we'll make sure they get what they need. It's not on our end. I think it's either at post office, not sure, just it's really random, but we are getting reports of that. So I just wanted to make sure everyone knew that. We have so far 2 major sponsors. We have C2AE, which is a platinum sponsor. Thank you, Sandra, you're here. And Labella, appreciate that, at a gold, I believe. We're starting to get some registrations. As of Friday, I think we had, I don't remember, 25 actual real registrations. We had some dignitaries and we had 4 registrations from our sponsors. So it's starting, I also forgot to point out at the beginning, we have Joshua on here and his video's off, but Josh, gosh, I have to look, Lumsden is our new Fort Drum intern. So I asked him to sit in on the meeting so he could just hear what our conversation's about. Josh, welcome.
Hi, everybody. I'm happy to be here.
He's just started last week, so he's working on some Black River things for us. I think he's going to work out really great. CFAs, I'm not going to go into too much detail. It was in Tug Hill Times, but our communities did pretty well. We got, I think, one of our snowmobile trail groomer grants was funded for Missing Link. The DeFerry at BOA was funded. Lots of wastewater projects were funded. There must have been a lot of money in that pot this time around. So good for them. One other thing, the recreation guide, and I sent you a document. We and all 4 of our county partners are out of print copies of the recreation guide. It's been very popular, especially COVID related, I think. We're adding 22 waterfalls for 2022 to our efforts with that. And there is a quote from Thousand Islands Tourism Council here to do a reprint and some additional advertising. It adds up to $20,000. I am wanting to support that in a big way since we aren't going to be expending all of our other budget money, given that our personnel hiring isn't happening as fast as we thought it would, et cetera. So I would like to support that at a $10,000 level. That would get us a lot of copies to have on hand. We could have them at the local government conference. We could have them at our county fair booths that we'll have again this coming summer. So I think I would actually like a motion and a approval on that to allocate some of our unallocated funds towards that as necessary.
I love that document. I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
Leona,
All those in favor?
Hi,
thank you. I think that is money really well spent. You're right.
Yes, it
It's
is.
a beautiful book. And then one last thing, the ARPA rules, if you're involved with municipalities at all, you know, they've been banging their heads against how they can spend their ARPA money and what kind of reporting is going to be required for that spending. The final rule just came out a couple weeks ago from the US Treasury, and they've really simplified things for small communities. Basically, the ARPA money that they are all going to receive, as long as they're under a $10 million threshold. I don't know, John, you said it on the webinar, you can refresh me. They can basically use it for government services. Is that right?
Correct. Yep. Yep. I think it was like a $10 million threshold. It was a huge amount. And I think they said only one municipality in the state actually was over 10 million. It's probably downstate New York City or something, but it was a large amount of money.
So that's going to make it a lot easier for our communities to figure out how they want to spend that. They were very worried about making sure they were following all the rules, but the rules are a lot easier to follow now. So that can be for parks, it can be for buildings, it can be, you know, pretty much anything that's general government services. So with that, I am done with my executive director's report and would welcome any questions.
Are we going to introduce Joseph Rowland?
We can. Joe, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name's Joe. I'm the circuit rider for the NOCOG in the Steuben, Guyana, Sylvan Beach area. And I'm glad to be here. And I'm glad that the group is going to be playing up at Carthage in October 20th. Looking forward to it very much.
Good.
Any other questions of Katie? Okay, with that, looks like we had Council of Governments reports. I think Angie looks like she went on a fire call. So I see that we have John from Northern Oneida County and we have Paul on. Who would like to go first?
I can go.
All right. Mr. Paul Baxter.
I'd like to say Happy New Year to everyone. And we're obviously well underway with the new year. We have 2 new supervisors in the North Shore and Salmon Rivers area. One of them comes to the supervisor's position from having been on the town board. The other one came to being supervisor via being the town codes officer. So both of them have prior government experience. And one of the advantages the codes officer had was he attended a lot of planning board and town board meetings prior to becoming supervisor. So it's not like he was just the codes officer. He was pretty involved with the local government before he became supervisor, and he's doing real well. So obviously there's some transition time demands and helping them through that and helping them come up to speed. We also have a new highway superintendent in the town of Parrish. So again, he's breaking himself in. And of course, weather being what it is in the Tug Hill region, any highway superintendent who takes office on January 1st has to be ready for taking on some potentially significant weather challenges, but so far they seem to be doing okay. So I can report that everybody seems to be quite enthusiastic about the local government conference taking place in person this year. And they're happy with the thought of Turning Stone. One very positive thing that I probably should mention, because it came up in the past, but it was several years ago, was, you may remember, several years ago, we talked about changing the date on the Tug Hill Local Government Conference well before the COVID era. And one of the points that came up then was our date then of that time at the end of March made it virtually impossible for town clerks to attend if they were also town clerks and tax collectors, because the end of March is very, very busy for tax collectors. With the change in date of the local government conference to April, I expect we're going to see an upswing in town clerks who have been interested all along but weren't necessarily able to attend in our past schedule. So I think we may see some changes there as a result of the change of scheduling and location.
Anything else?
I think that covers it for now. I came in a little bit late. I was having some computer problems, which I'll talk to Katie about later. But you came in, when I came in, you were talking about the potential interest in additional communities joining the Tug Hill region, getting Tug Hill services one way or another. As Jan notes, that's been something that's been an active interest for quite some time. I started working with Tug Hill back in 1979, and I think in 1979, the North Shore and Salmon Rivers area were both part of the Tug Hill region legislatively. But yeah, it's been a long-term interest. It's been an accident of history that they weren't included in the Tug Hill region. The legislature didn't want to include them when they were already involved in SLEAC, and perhaps the ideal time to have brought them into Tug Hill legislatively might have been when SLEAC went away, but obviously that was a very volatile time, and suggesting anything having to do with changes with Tug Hill probably would have been very dangerous at that time. They could easily have said, well, we're going to get rid of Tug Hill as well as SLEAC. So it's probably just as well that that didn't happen at that time. But there has been a long-term interest in Tug Hill with those adjacent communities, and I expect there will continue to be.
Good. Any questions of Paul? Yes, silence means consent. John, do you have anything for us?
Just a few things, actually. NOCOG's been chugging right along. Much like Paul, we've had some changes too with our local government. We have 4 communities that actually have new supervisors. Couple brand new guys, a couple that were on the board as councilmen. So there's been some interest, of course, when we had the newly elected trainings. And again, as Paul saying too, I think Joe can concur with that, is that we've had some positive feedback from the local government conference being held at the Turning Stone. I think it's good for Northern United County just because it's closer for those communities than Watertown was. So I hope we'll see an uptick in attendance from the NOCOG communities with that. We're still looking for a director for our board of directors. You know, when Mark Turnchak, his last meeting was December. It's going to be it may be a challenge to fill. I've had a little bit of interest, but nothing seems to be, nobody really wants to commit, even though it's not a big time commitment. They don't seem to be, I have a new supervisor that is taking on a lot, and he was the guy that I thought may be interested in it, but his wife was at the last meeting and he said she'd give him the look if he decided to take that. So one thing too, and this is Jerry Ritter can concur with this, NOCOG is part of the local government education committee, which provides a lot of training for a lot of our local governments. It was decided back in December, the committee is going to dissolve, partially because a lot of the same people. I think you'll find that happens everywhere. A lot of the same people doing all the work. Jerry, one of them, and she wants to retire and actually take some time for herself. And I think what's going to happen, we'll find out in February, that Mohawk Valley Economic Development District, Mike Smith is going to take the local government education committee and make it a subcommittee of MVED. And that way we still have the opportunity to provide the training to our local governments, and actually it will expand out more in the region and not just Northern Oneida County. So it should be a good move. NOCOG, I'll be on that committee, so we still have a say in some of the training and getting that word out. So I think that's a good thing. To echo what Katie said, Tug Hill Commission is working NOCOG's working with the Tug Hill Commission with that broadband infrastructure problem. And that's because even though one of the addresses in question is actually in Angie's COG, the ACS district covers three counties, a lot of it in Northern Oneida County. And it's kind of a weird way it worked out. They're doing their broadband equity survey. One thing led to another, and then we started working with ACS. And like you said, Jan, it's not an easy fix, but hopefully, I think like Katie says, we're in the right direction, and there's going to be some other communities, Ava maybe being one of them, that can kind of benefit from this as well. I think that's really about it for us. Again, we keep plugging away, and Jan, I like the haircut.
Thanks, John. Any questions, John? Good. Okay. I don't see Mickey, and I don't see, and I guess Angie did put a chat in that she had to run to a call. So, Katie, do you have anything for the river area or for the?
I will just say Mickey was having some water issues this morning with the cold weather, so he was not going to join us. He has been still in the depths of this LED lighting project. Crews are out replacing lights as we speak. There's been a lot of pressure to get those projects done as fast as possible, because the LED lighting project was included in both the Jefferson and Lewis County shared services plans. So getting that done as close to the end of 2021 as possible will benefit them when they go to submit their shared services plans, which means some money in our municipalities' pockets, because they're getting some of the cost back from that initiative that DOS does. So he's been really busy with that, frankly, and he has a lot of communities taking advantage of the website opportunities that RACOG offers. And so he's been spending way too much time, I think, doing that, unfortunately, as they get set up. But hopefully that'll lessen as he gets people trained in those communities to make the website edits. He also has, I think, at least 3 new supervisors, town of Lowville, town of Champion, and the town of Denmark. So again, that's a lot to be working with some new supervisors, making sure they have what they need as they get themselves organized. So that's what Mickey's been up to. And Angie, I think they are still searching for another associate circuit rider. Carly is done at the end of January, which just leaves Beth and Angie, which she has way too much area to cover. So I think that they had some names and they were going to be doing some interviews soon. That's been top of the list priority wise for Angie.
Just one question, John. Is Dorian still the chair? Is he still on the board?
He is on the board, but we did switch. John stepped down, and now Bob Sauer is taking. They just kind of switched. Bob was the vice chair. John was the chair. John was thinking about stepping down from that responsibility, so we discussed it, and Bob's going to step up. Bob's been the chair, if I'm not mistaken. He was the chair in the past, so not too big of a change.
Yep. But John's still on the board then. Okay.
John's still on the board. Yeah.
Okay. Good. Sorry about that. Thanks. Okay. Any other questions on the Council of Governments? Finance report.
So you all got a financial statement and notes on your email. I'm going to share the financial statement there. As I looked at it this morning, there was one line, the computer line. What you have shows 25,000. It should have been 21,000, which bumps our unallocated back up to closer to 6,500. Just there was some confusion that I generated on that, so I just wanted to point that out. Otherwise, we're in good shape. Like I said before, we're going to end up, not nearing our budgeted amount just because of the salary isn't going to be where I thought it would be by now. And I do have good news that the remainder of the laptops that we ordered are in. They were delivered, I think, Friday. So they just need to be set up and then distributed to the rest of staff who are still using the older desktops that have not really functioned all that well during COVID, don't have cameras in them, don't support Microsoft Teams and a lot of this video stuff very well. They just weren't made for it. So these new laptops should help some headaches get solved and just make us more functional. Any questions on the financials?
Okay. Moving right along. Any public comment, any questions, any concerns, any issues, just general comments?
Can I just briefly, a reminder, or maybe a little bit of a report to Angie and John and I met 2 weeks ago now, or a week ago now, with Environmental Finance Center about putting together a bit of a training on succession planning. This idea was born out of John's NOCOG. The idea of making sure there is continuity when positions change abruptly, not abruptly, in good times and bad times. So when there's elections and people leave, and just so that there's a continuity and succession and good communication, some good practices. So I sent an email around to the staff, and I just, as a way of a reminder, if there's any kind of things you'd like addressed in this type of training, a webinar, a checklist, everything from, and John, feel free to chip in here, anything from like, who do you call when the heater breaks down, to like, where are the passwords, those kinds of things when there's turnover in personnel, how to make that go better. So just a reminder, let me know if you have any ideas or thoughts about that kind of training.
Okay. Anything else?
Jerry, you're muted. I had to mute you when your phone was ringing. So let me ask you to unmute. There you go. There you go.
Okay. I just would like to add to that the quarry in White Lake was approved by DEC and APA last week. It's been a really hot button issue. They were still going to come out with some conditions or recommendations. As far as I know, that hasn't been issued yet, but it's going to come back to the town planning board. And all we can really do, because according to our local law, we give up the regulatory and the issuing of the permit authority to DEC. We can just issue a business review like any other commercial business, and can perhaps add some hours of operation, review it as a business plan. That's about it. But we know that we're going to get a lot of feedback on it because it was strongly opposed. If you'd gone up Route 28 in the last year, there was close to 100 signs between Woodgate and Otter Lake, stop the quarry. So, but the plans seem to be okay with APA and DEC. So I just had one other question regarding the marijuana laws. People, I think, are still confused about that. The town voted against, well, they opted out, where the village opted in. And also, is it town of Lewis opted in? Town of Eau Forge opted in, I believe, even though they're outside the region. But it seems like nobody paid attention to municipalities took some action. Then everybody's going, why didn't we know about this? Have you heard anything, John?
The only thing that I really heard actually was in the town of Boonville, as far as
Yeah.
the public not being in support of the town opting out. Angie, if she was here, she could tell you a lot of the municipalities in her cog opted out, waiting for further direction from the state. You know, they wanted to see what kind of requirements, what kind of policies were going to be in place. And the town of Boonville did the same thing. However, there's a family that, from what I understand, wants to start a bit of a business. From what I understood, it was more on the agri side of it, but it's also on the on-premise consumption and the retail sales. So they want to cover all aspects of it. They want to grow it, they want to sell it, and they want to have a place where you can consume it all within the village. I'm not sure what happens in that part, where if the village opts in and the town opts out, or from what I understand, there was a kind of a heated meeting last month or this past month. They were looking for reasons why the town opted out. And the only answer that was given, which of course it's a standard answer, is that we're waiting for some more information from the state. But that's the only. Everybody else, I mean, they didn't take any action, because like the town of Trenton, they have a pretty big commercial district, and they were thinking that it's, even if it's 1% or if it's 10% of the revenue generated, the town's still going to get some money. I think the village of Holland Patton, they opted out just because they don't see where they could even have a retail store in the village, and they didn't want it. But again, of course, the whole thing is, if you opt out, you can still opt in at any time. If you choose to stay in, you can't opt out later on. So I think that's one of the reasons behind the opting out. But again, really, Boonville was the only one there was any kind of issue with it.
Yeah, and it's, from what I understand, it's a local family that's interested. And I mean, there's a lot of rumors flying around. One that I heard over the weekend is that they were interested in the old Ethan Allen site, which was then Bowers Lumber. And everybody thinks it's going to bring a lot of revenue to the town.
Well, what I kind of,
some people.
Yeah, I came in, this was the first Boonville meeting that I've been to in a while, and when I was looking at some of the notes from the December meeting, it wasn't an issue, I guess, back in December. It became an issue now because they opted out in December and nobody knew about it until January. So of course, that's when it became an issue. And Boonville's famous for the rumor mill, and then they were bashing the town board, I guess, on social media, doing some personal attacks, which of course just creates a lot of animosity between the family and the board. But that's from what I gathered. And then I read an article about the one kid who wants to start the business. From what I understand, he's trying to raise $30 million. So this is what makes me think it's part of the agri side of it. And he's been doing this cannabis. He's been in the cannabis business now for, I guess, 10 or 15 years in Colorado, in Massachusetts, maybe. And now he wants to bring it home. When I read the article, it said it is going to try to create like 160 jobs. I don't know the ins and outs of the business plan, where that would make that much. But then they're also saying that it's going to bring business into Boonville. And of course, you're going to have the trickle down effect from more people being in the town. And I think they're saying it's on premise. I don't know where, again, I don't know enough about the business to say where they come up with these numbers. If it's going to be in Ethan Allen, it must be because if they're going to try to grow it, again, that's where I'm thinking the agri side of it, because I mean, that's a huge facility, and and it has to be pretty much climate controlled. So maybe they're going to try to grow it, harvest it, and sell it there. But why that would affect the town, I don't know, because the village has its own domain over Ethan Allen, unless they're looking for areas outside of the village to grow as well. Again, I don't know a lot of the details. I just know there was a lot of angst at that meeting.
Yes, yeah. And as you said, the rumor mill is really,
and the rumor mill was in full swing. So that's unfortunate, because that doesn't help. That really doesn't help anybody.
No.
I don't think that this is going to really, for these small communities, they're opting out of dispensaries in their communities. That's not really going to matter. The cost to set up a dispensary and the regulations that are going to be associated with it, you're going to be a company that
Yes.
does that. You're not going to be an individual. So you're not going to see dispensaries in Four Corners. You're going to see them in major cities. You're going to see them in I would think you're going to see them in college towns, but you're not going to see them in the small communities of Lewis County. And I can assure you that's not going to happen here. But we have a session coming up at the local leadership conference, and I think that is going to be a well-attended session on cannabis management, the cannabis program. I know most of the folks that are working at that office right now, and the process right now is they are working very hard at putting process policies together. And this is not something that's going to be released. That's going to be very simple. So if a community thinks they're opting out, I don't know what they're opting out of. It's the law of the land in New York State is going to be making marijuana legal. So it doesn't make much sense to me, but time will tell. They can always opt back in if they want.
Jane, I think that's why some of the towns have opted out, because they didn't know all the ins and outs of it, and this way giving a little flexibility. And I'd have to agree with you. I think from what I've read, the licensing to have a dispensary in any community is quite expensive, and you would have to have it in a major metropolitan area to make so you can make any profit, I think. So
yeah.
I agree with you.
What I've seen is that they're looking at an Apple experience when you go into these stores. So, I mean, it's going to be very different. They've got professional marketing companies working on this. They want dispensaries all to look the same. And again, this is not going to be once it gets released and again and it becomes business. It's not going to be something that's going to be a fly by night. Let's put it that way. You're going to be in it for the long term, and you're going to be in it to make money. I have one other issue here. I just wanted to make a correction. We've been receiving a lot of calls at the commission office about the New York State Carbon Reduction Plan, that board that was put together and their findings. We've had some of our elected state officials report to the community that the state is trying to eliminate wood burning stoves. And my hopes are that those individuals would have read some of the documentation that went behind it, because that's absolutely not correct. So what you hear is not correct. They're not trying to outlaw wood burning stoves. So I think it's important to just make a comment on that. Any other comments or questions?
Two quick follow-up items. So as we've been sitting here, some of us got an email from that there's going to be a set of public engagement opportunities around cannabis called Cannabis Conversations. They're all going to be online, it looks like, over the next month or so. And that is coming out of the Office of Cannabis Management in Albany. So I will send that around to everybody in case you want to join. It looks like I said, it's online. And then regarding the wood burning, we have been getting a lot of questions. So Angie took the lead and reached out to DEC to ask them specifically what's true and what's not about the wood burning situation. So in Tug Hill Times a couple of weeks ago, we and the front page had a thing about the Climate Action Council and the scoping plan. So everyone knows that that's out there and it's available for public comment right now. But also we had an article with DEC's official statement to us that we got approval to publish that the intention is not to eliminate wood stoves, anything like that. And I won't read it, it's in Tug Hill Times, but just so you know, that's kind of where that came from, was straight from the horse's mouth, right from DEC.
Those conference calls with cannabis management, is there a limited number? Is that something you might want to throw in Tug Hill Times?
I will put it in Tug Hill Times. I can't tell if it's a limited number, but if it's virtual, usually, hundreds of people can join on those.
Okay. I think you'd be surprised. A lot of people might join.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. Any other comments?
Are there going to be any more webinars coming up?
The historical ones, Leona?
Yes.
We've been percolating some ideas. I have one that's going to be focused on the Hunt Club tradition on Tug Hill, and that would be with Jack Thoden from Boonville area, talking specifically about his club. The name just went right out of my brain, but it's on East Branch of Fish Creek. I have to get back together with him. We met before the new year, and so that one's been percolating. And then also Bob Sauer and I went and met with Jim Burke up in Florence again before the holidays, and we were talking about trying to get him to do something virtual. Haven't figured out the details of that. He's really not a computer guy, and he's playing music, so that's out there. And then Jen actually did a really interesting interview with, and I'll let her say it.
Is Elena and I had going back to the one of the first webinars we did on the Florence settlement, we learned from that group, Camden Central School, that there was some interest in the Civilian Conservation Corps and the camps that were here on Tug Hill. I believe there was two or three, Katie, Winona, Camden, and Boonville maybe. So there were 3 camps, and we thought what a great idea to just get some history of what those camps were and what they did. And it turns out there's this underground network of folks on social media and these groups that really are trying to keep that legacy alive. But anyway, through that conversation, we learned about a gentleman named Herb Thorpe, who lives in Rome, who did serve in Camden at the Civilian Conservation Corps right before the start of World War II, and then he enlisted in the what became the Tuskegee Airmen. So out of that conversation, we started talking about putting together a webinar capturing Herb's story. He's 98, so we had the opportunity to meet with him, interview him down at the Oneida County Historical Society, who are going to be wonderful partners. We have an oral history recorded between Elena, I, and the gentleman from Oneida County, and they've passed that video on to, I believe, was it the Auburn Historical Society? They're putting it on their website for Black History Month. So our plan is to try to get a webinar series together on the Civilian Conservation Corps, having Herb's history be part of that webinar series.
So yeah, long story short, we've got a lot of ideas, nothing scheduled. LGC, we've kind of have to shift gears a little bit to LGC, getting that done. We've been spending so much time with interviews and that kind of thing. Honestly, it's been hard to focus on the history, but we don't want to lose that. So I'm glad you asked, Leona. And if you want to do another one, let us know. We'd be happy to schedule you.
I don't think I could talk my son into it again. Jen, Bilky Moore has a lot of information about the Winona camp, if that would help you any.
It might, and there's quite a bit of information already gathered here. It was Nancy Plant years ago did a compilation of files from, what's his name, Katie? Is it Chuck Larrabee or?
Oh,
Dave Larrabee. Yep.
Dave Larrabee, sorry.
Yep.
Yep. So we do have a lot of information there. So thanks.
Yep.
Anything else? Well, we're looking at 11:30. Our next scheduled meeting is going to be Monday, March 21st. As of today, it's planned for Cleveland. And we'll keep it that way unless something changes. And with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Don't move.
Second.
Second.
All those in favor.
Right.
Bye. Have a good week.
Have a good week, guys.
Yeah.
Thanks, everybody. See you in a couple
Bye.
months.
Keep warm.
Bye.
Thank you.